Millions of people are addicted to hours of gazing at electronic images on game screens in arcades and in their own homes.
Most stores started selling the system today, and they've already sold out. Toys R Us had the largest shipment available to the public, and before noon, they were sold out.
Good afternoon, I'm Donna Gregory.
And I'm Heidi Deja. There are waiting lists and tickets just to stand in line and get a chance to buy PlayStation 2.
Man, the graphics is outstanding out here. I'm loving it.
Can you catch all 150 Pokemon? Yeah, on your Game Boy, that's where. Pokemon for Game Boy is here. With both packs, you can catch.
I've never seen 10,000 tapes in one store.
There's so much kid stuff.
And I can keep them for 3 evenings.
Now this is a video store.
Physical media has come a long way since the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Now that doesn't mean that digital media doesn't have its perks, but that does not mean that we should have to erase ownership for it.
With physical media under attack, only those who are selling it can keep it alive. They are
almost been conditioned into us. You know, when they first started transferring things into digital, it was all under the guise of convenience. You know, it's conveniently located. You could, you know, put it on different things. You know, you can take it with you without physically having that thing with you. You could take it with you wherever you go, right? It's supposed to be convenient, you know, and having something on your laptop just downloaded, or maybe not downloaded, but being able to stream it or whatnot on your laptop or your phone. There's convenience in that because you could take that anywhere. You don't have to have, and you can have a lot more data on these digital streaming things like your laptop and your phone. You can have way more. The library can be way bigger, and it would still weigh the same. Like it's not gonna be heavier in your hand or harder to carry or whatnot. It's gonna, you know, be the same. And you know, it's made this transition for convenience, but because now that this is seemingly the only way to view these things, then corporations come in and they say like, hey, like, we know you want this, now you should pay extra to have even more convenience on this thing. All of this was supposed to be for convenience. And because it's so convenient now, they can do whatever for pricing, for you know, how they charge you or how much they even give you. And I think that's when the rental part started coming in, because then whoever is the owner of it can rent it out to a bunch of people and revoke that access at any time. So it seems like on the consumer end, they also have it, which, you know, is good for the company, but the company still owns it. But like we were talking about, at any time they could revoke that access and the company wouldn't lose anything. I think it's one of those things where both sides definitely have pros and cons, but because this side is a little more convenient, it's seen as better in all regards to this side. And I think in recent years, it's kind of been shown that it's not necessarily true.
Do I have my own collection? Of course I have my own collection. I've always liked, no, that's not the wrong word. I've always loved collecting. My collection is dope. I remember how I got my first PlayStation 2, right? So I was in maybe, forgot what grade I was in, but I was really, really young. And my dad worked at Circuit City at the time. For those that don't know what Circuit City is basically Best Buy, right? And so my dad worked at Circuit City. He was a manager. And I was having a really hard time memorizing my ABCs, getting A through Z. Because in my class, around the trim of the ceiling, they would have the alphabet. And we would have to memorize the alphabet. And like each student would come up and have to say the whole alphabet or whatever, right? And I was struggling. Your boy couldn't get through, I think it was F. I think F was messing me up, right? I couldn't get through F, right? And my dad made a bet with me. He said, listen, if you get a perfect A through Z score, I will get you a PlayStation 2, right? My brother had one. You already know, like I said, I always emulated my brother, always wanted to be my brother. So I was like, I need a PS2. I didn't really know how to play games like that, but I was like, your boy needs a PS2. So I go and study my ass off. There is no, from that grade to after college, I've never studied that hard in my life or anything. I vividly remember this. Went there and got I aced it. A through Z, got it. You know, it was crazy. I couldn't even tie my shoe yet by myself at the time. But A through Z's, your boy could do it frontwards, backwards, sideways, didn't matter at that point, right? I was good. And when I came home, my dad got the PS2. He got the PS2, and it was crazy because he already bought the PS2. Like, now I got older, and I realized, like, how this man, because he didn't hear about it, so I was like, how did he already have the PS2, like, when I got home? The PS2 was there. So there's no way he would have known I did it. But he believed in me that I could do it. And so that's why the PS2, my PS2 is so important to me, because I'll never forget that moment between my dad and myself about, you know, that memory, that core memory that I still remember. I can recall. I'm 28 years old. I can still recall that memory. That's how important that PS2 is. It's basically plastic as some computer components in it, but it means something to me. And I feel like once you eliminate a lot of those moments with at least for me in my collection, when I get rid of the PS2, when I get rid of my GameCube or my Nintendo 64, some of those things, I lose some of those moments that I can recall that may not be able to recall so vividly without looking or playing these games or things like that. So that's why physical media really holds a place to me, is because the memories that is associated with it and just the ownership of things, I think is really important.
And I'm like the the ugly duckling out of my other like video game and like nerd friends, because they're still on physical. They live by physical. But with me, it's like I'm really lazy, so I don't want to get up. If I'm on the couch, like I'm on the couch right now, and I'm playing Spider-Man, and then I said, okay, I want to put down Spider-Man and put in God of War, right? I don't want to have to actually get up off of the couch, go through go get the disc, take the Spider-Man out the PlayStation 5, put the disc in the case, put the case away, get God of War, open the case, get the disc out, put that in, sit back on the couch, maybe there's an update. I don't want to do that every time I want to switch through a game. Like if I'm online and we're in a party chat and you say to me, let's play Call of Duty, you can just jump right into Call of Duty. Let's play Overwatch, or let's say Ratchet and Clank or whatever it is, right? I can just do it at the press of a button. I don't have to get up and change the disc. I don't want to have to do that all the time. I know that sounds really lazy. It is lazy. Like, it's really convenient. At a convenience, I don't want to change disc anymore. I'm over that. So that's one thing. And then another thing is just space. Like, I don't have to find a space to put all these things anymore physically. I can just download them, keep them on my account, and play them when I want them. Been a nerd like then versus now. It was everything was slower. I would say back then everything was a lot slower in terms of like access to information, because I remember being subscribed to like Nintendo Power. I begged my mother to get the subscription to Nintendo Power, Game Informer, and PlayStation Magazine. PlayStation Magazine was cool because back in PS2, it came with a demo disc. So every month you got different demos of games that would come. And I think that was the coolest thing back then. This is like early 2000s, probably 2001, 2. I remember that every month getting the magazine. And not only like being excited about reading articles in the magazine, but actually getting that demo disc was really cool for PlayStation Magazine. Of course, that was physical, and I still have some of those demo discs too, but that was a really cool thing about that. And now, versus now, you just go on the internet, you know, IGN, YouTube, it's a bunch of people covering video game news. You can just get the information really quick, you know, the same day. But back then, you had to get it on a month-to-month basis, or wait for like E3 to roll around, or watch G4 TV, waiting for them to cover it. But now you can just get it from Twitter, you get it on your phone, you can get it right away. But back then, it was always the anticipation of waiting for that magazine in the mail, or making that trip to GameStop with your friends. You know, the midnight releases, all of that stuff, you had to wait and plan it more, and it meant more because there was a build-up. But nowadays, you can just get it instantly. So I think that's the biggest difference between now and then. It's different when you're playing on a cabinet. Like growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, you know, I don't have them anymore, but going to arcades was like a big thing for me. And you know, being at the mall and my mom's over there shopping, I'm in the arcade by myself for hours with a bunch of quarters. And just the feel of the joysticks and the buttons, and have, you know, the marquee light up, the arcade, and standing next to a cabinet. It's just nostalgic. It's just what I wanted as a kid. As a kid, you know, it was a special thing to actually go to an arcade and play these games, fighting games, light gun games, all that kind of stuff. And you know, as an adult, to be able to wake up every day and just be able to play, you know, thousands of arcade games in your home without having to put a bunch of quarters in there. It was just like the coolest thing in the world to me then, and it's still the coolest thing in the world to me now. So, you know, that's why I still had that itch for it. It still was something that I felt was something that I felt was just like one of the coolest things I could have in my house, instead of having to go to the arcade. Well, they don't even have any arcades anymore. Unless you go to like Dave & Buster's, it's like the closest thing to an arcade you can find. But like traditional arcades aren't a thing anymore. So that's why I bought that. And that one in particular has a bunch of arcade games, obviously, but it also has emulators from, you know, PlayStation 1, 2, 3, Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox. It has a whole bunch of console games on there too, obviously emulated, but going all the way back to the Atari 2600 till now. So as well as having thousands of arcade games, it has a bunch of console games on there too. So basically it's like having video game history all in one. It's basically like a video game museum. If like, you know, if someone came from another planet and said, what are video games, I can just show them that arcade machine and say, this is like where they started, and this is where they went, and this is where they are now, and it's all encased in that machine. So I thought it was just a really cool thing to have in that way.
So my earliest memories of video games are my neighbor down the street getting Super Mario Brothers on the NES, and seeing that game in his home. He had a CRT television in his bedroom, and seeing that game just absolutely blew my mind. I mean, I probably had been to arcades at that point, but seeing something like that in someone's home, a game that was just so bright and colorful and exciting, and it just felt like a whole world was out there. And, you know, we had Atari at the time, but it was leaps and bounds ahead of that. So seeing that really opened up my imagination and excitement about video games. And then my next door neighbor, maybe a year later, got The Legend of Zelda on the NES. And I don't remember him ever letting me play it, but I watched him play it quite a bit. And it had that beautiful, shiny gold cartridge. And just the sight of that box and cartridge, because the box has a little viewing window inside of it where you can see the gold cartridge inside. Just the sight of that was so exciting. And then seeing the game being this open world fantasy game, which I'd never seen anything like it, and not really understanding what was happening. And it was just, again, a mind-blowing experience. And then probably the next year for Christmas, I had 9 presents under the tree, basically. I had one big one, and then I had 8 small ones, all wrapped beautifully. And when I opened up the big one, it was a Sega Master System. And then the 8 little ones were Sega Master System games.
Sega challenges you with the ultimate video games. Games that'll blow you away. Like Alex Kidd in Miracle World. And coming soon, Monopoly. Knockout games like Rocky. Gangster Town. shift into more excitement with the arcade hit Outrun. Only on the Sega system. Sega, the challenge will always be there.
So I finally had my own video game console, and it was just so exciting to get something. You know, I was probably 7 or 8 at the time, so to get that for myself and then have a whole big stack of games. And I was only familiar with Nintendo mostly, so seeing the Sega stuff, it was just, again, like 8 titles I'd never heard of, you know, Afterburner and Outrun and lots of exciting stuff. And it was just, again, all those 3 experiences together just expanded my mind to within the games themselves and then also outside, like, wow, this is what fun looks like. This is what exciting new discovery looks like. My Nana and Papa lived in Texas, and my Papa owned a business, and he owned a paper company, and he was someone I looked up to tremendously. And I remember going into his office many times and seeing the hustle and bustle of the office. It was a big, at least as a kid, it felt like this big, expansive, sprawling sales floor, and he had an office all the way in the back, and you walk into his office and he had a mini fridge and he had a big desk with papers all over. And just seeing him run the business and the concept of owning a business was so exciting and interesting. And I think all of us sort of have a part of us innately that's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to own a store? It seems like this far away idea and concept, but it's like, wouldn't that be cool to own a store? And, you know, that carried in my mind throughout my life, but I never really thought that I would do it. So I moved to Northern Virginia when I was 22, and I worked for the government for 17 years. And at one point I was like, you know, I'm getting older, and I've just been sitting here working for the government. I loved my job, but I've just been doing this over and over. Maybe I should try something new. I love video games. Maybe I should open a video game store. And it was just as quick as that. And then I spent a year and a half preparing, and then I opened the store.
Put me right back to square one. Take a look around you. The coast is clear. You faced your fears. Just keep me nipping. And watch dreams appear. You faced your fears. Just keep me nipping.
So we've seen a lot of this the last few years with big businesses and companies experimenting with digital-only consoles, and just recently big box stores getting rid of physical media in some forms. It seems to me that the last generation of consoles may have saved one of the large video game chains. I think they were struggling quite a bit, and the Switch came along and pretty much saved them. So I think that for a lot of the big businesses, they obviously know what their numbers look like, but I think it would be very scary for some of them if they lost that hardware. I don't know about the software. The hardware certainly seems to be a game changer for them. If they can no longer sell consoles to their customers, I think it's been proven that maybe other gaming-related merchandise doesn't sell quite as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens if we move towards an all-digital front. As for the effect on small businesses, I think it can actually be very positive because, you know, we're a retro-focused game store. We still carry CRTs and VCRs and other things that are out of date that you can't get anywhere else now, right? So you can't buy a CRT in a store or even in a Goodwill or a thrift store now, right? So we're the place that has those. In a future where there's less and less physical media or physical items in general, it allows stores like this, more boutique stores, to focus on that kind of stuff and offer that stuff. And as long as there's demand for it, it can actually be really good, right? You could even theoretically open up a VHS rental store or a DVD only sales store or something like that. So I'm mostly excited for what that future looks like. Things will certainly change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's going to affect big businesses' physical stores a lot more than maybe they understand. I think it's also been proven over time that maybe some of these bigger companies don't have a strong understanding of their customer base. Of course, they have the data, so they know what they're doing. But, are these stores going to be able to survive on appliances? Maybe. But there's a whole huge market of other stuff out there that they're not tapping. I mean, video games is one of the biggest industries in the country, right? So If they get away from that, then they're going to have a hard time, I think. And it seems to me that it's possible, and not to be too dramatic, but AI has just made a huge leap forward again. And the further we get away from physical items and objects and what is real and what is not real, there's a very good chance that people are going to crave what they can hold and know is real in the future. I know I feel that way. AI is really interesting and cool, and digital media is interesting and cool. I mean, I of course subscribe to Netflix, and that's great. But at the same time, if there's anything that I care about, I want to own it so that I can always use it and always have access to it. And we've had so many examples recently. It seems like once a week I'm seeing stories about this company has removed access to something that people have bought digitally. We've had 3 major providers or retailers that have recently said, oh yeah, you bought that thing digitally, but that was only the license, and that license is expired now. Or 2 big companies merge, and they go, well, that was actually for the other company, so yeah, you can buy it again if you want. But the idea of not owning something that you have purchased is just terrifying to, I think almost everyone. Even if people, there is certainly an ease of use, oh, let me just download something digitally. But I think it's sort of universal. If you pay money for something, you want that something, right? And I think they're going to figure all that stuff out, but it's very possible that they figure it out on the, that they err on the side of the larger companies rather than us as the individuals, right? They'll be like, no, they're right. You only own the license. You only own access to it or something like that.
And one of the things that gets lost when it comes to digital versus physical media, pertaining to video games especially, is that trading in video games is a big way of how I was able to buy other video games and be able to play so many video games, right? My parents and my family didn't really have the bread like that, especially since my brother, who also loves video games, and then you have me who loves video games, and we couldn't share for nothing. So sometimes either we would have to buy the same game twice, or he also had drastically different tastes of video games. I had drastically different tastes of video games. We're 8 years apart. So he would play something like Devil May Cry, and I would play something like Sonic. So we couldn't even share the same games, even if we weren't arguing, right? That cost a lot of money, and that wasn't happening all the time. So a lot of the ways that I would be able to afford a lot of these games was through trade-ins. Now, there's no secret that trade-ins you usually get screwed over, and that's also because that company needs to make their money too. So as an adult, I understand the business behind it. But if I want to get a new game and I didn't have the money and I was too young to get a job, well, one of the only ways I could afford it was to trade in these games for a new game. And it worked. If I was done playing a game, it was going to just sit there anyway. I wasn't at this point now where it's like, oh, these games are worth hundreds of dollars. That wasn't the point back then. The point was, I want to play video games. My friends have the new Call of Duty or the new Madden or something. I want to be able to play that. I don't want to burden my parents. How can I get both? And I was like, oh, trade in your video game. So that's how you can afford it. But how can you trade in a digital copy of a video game? Another argument that's been made by these companies is that the reason why video games keep getting more expensive, not only all the technology, all the technical things, but because it costs so much money to manufacture these discs and spread them all over the place to distribute them, and then people, all that stuff. Well, then why is a digital copy to a physical game worth the same, if not more? That doesn't make any sense. And the employees who make these games have not gotten, over the years, a dramatic pay increase. They're still fighting for pay increases. In fact, at the time of this video, there's been authorized for a SAG strike on the video game industry for voice actors, right? And many other people who are part of SAG that are part of the video game making process now. So that means that there's still a lot of rights and still a lot of things that have not been getting better through the increased price of video games. When I was a kid, a new video game was worth $20, $30. Now, a new video game for a PS5, Xbox Series X will run you about $70. If you want to get a limited edition or something like that, it's going to cost you $100+, right? So the increase in price and the digital product, that's not, the math's not mathing. So comic book stores play a huge part in the nerd and geek community, right? Because while online spaces have made it so you can access or have interaction with people from all over the world, in my opinion, there's nothing that can replace the interaction you have with your local community. right? Because at the end of the day, things that affect you on the community level affect the average person's life compared to like globally. And being able to go to your local comic book store, you know, being able to meet those people in person, be able to see that, oh, I'm not alone. There's other people who like comic books, graphic novels, Dungeons and Dragons, Pokemon, One Piece, whatever card game you're getting into now, or Magic the Gathering, for example, things like that. You get that in person. And if you're like me, who's a fan of trading card games, there's nothing like opening a fresh pack with your friends and be able to, as the name suggests, trade your cards with other people and be able to do all these different things that you don't really get to do online. And they're trying their best to mimic it online. They're trying their best to have digital codes with every pack, physical pack you buy, where you can upload it to your digital deck, or you know, you can trade online, things like that. And there's many benefits to that. Again, like I said, there's a lot of people who are disabled or people who just cannot make it out, whether it's autoimmune diseases, and there's so many different reasons why people can't go out and interact with the general public like a lot of other people can. With that being said, to completely erase physical media, to say that comic book stores don't have any more belonging or any reason to exist is just false, right? I mean, even going to the staff of comic book stores, they're very important and play a vital role into pumping blood and oxygen back in to the comic book and physical media community, right? Because let's say you're a person who's trying to get into it, like you're new to, again, card games, tabletop games, comic books, video games, you name it. If you're new to it, it can be overwhelming, right? I mean, the comic book history itself is very long and rich, with the first one come out, I believe, in 1897, right? And then you fast forward to about 1935, right, when what will be known as now DC Comics released their first comic book. And then a couple of years after that, fast forwarding around the 30s, you have Superman coming out from the same duo that started the comic book around 1935. So it has a really long and rich history when it comes to comic books, and that can be very overwhelming, of course, to a lot of people. I mean, that's decades upon decades of history that you're trying to just like jump into, and there's so many different issues, so many different runs, so many different amazing artists and storytellers. It's hard to figure out where you want to exactly go with that. So having a staff, which you cannot mimic online, at least they haven't done a great job of mimicking online yet, having that staff going in physically, having them have their recommendations, where to start, where you should end, what characters you may like, what characters you may dislike, what stories you may like, what stories may inspire you to want to create your own comic book one day, or pursue your own journey in storytelling. Like, those are kind of connections that you can't always mimic online. And comic book stores have a place in their community, right? They have so many events. There's events where you can go and meet your favorite artist or voice actor or storyteller, right? And you can do that in a store. You can't do that online. That's experiences that you cannot get anywhere else, right? And I've attended a lot of these events myself. And a lot of these events, by the way, are free, which is an amazing feat. I mean, you can go get an autograph and interact for a little bit with some of the most famous names in the game in modern era for free. And that's because your local comic book store got your back. And that's something that you cannot mimic online. That those are experiences or memories you're going to live on forever. I've been in a lot of these places, and a lot of great friends you meet are in the lines to that autograph or to meeting that person, that meet and greet, right? And you also see so many interactions with families. You see their dad or their mom and their children like going to meet this person. And it's such a joyous experience to see that nerdness passed down to the next generation. And it means so much to that family, and that's an experience that you can't get anywhere else. And that's why I always advocate for the importance of physical media being in a physical store in which you can go get. Again, Amazon, so many of these other places that are just like, you buy something, click, and it's here the next day. While that's nice, there's so many elements, so much social interaction that you're removing from society when you do that, that it creates almost dystopian-like future that scares someone like me and many other people like myself.
What I love about comic book stores is it's an escape, you know? You get to come to this place where you have, where you're surrounded by everything that you love, everything you're interested in, and it's a whole different world from like, you know, outside of here. You're surrounded by pop culture, people who are also nerds, and it's just an escape from your reality. Just come here and spend time and browse the shelves and be greeted by like similar people, you know?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I grew up going to comic shops as a kid, and comic shops, record stores, skate shops, whatever it might be, they were always like a constant. You know, I moved around a lot, so it was cool to see different, you know, there's always like, oh, let me find the comic shop, let me find the record store. And you always felt like you belonged there.
It's
and
the
like,
place you fit in.
You fit in, yeah. And like, you know, like I think that's what's cool, and that's the thing that at Third Eye that we're really like, this is the place where everybody comes and we got their favorite thing. And we all speak the same language, which is our love of the things that we're into, you know? It all starts here. So you're not going to get Invincible without this, you know, because Invincible, it's got to brew, it's got to stew for years before it makes it to Amazon. And without having Ground Zero, which is, you know, whether it's a store like this, which, you know, we're a big store, but we aren't always a big store. When Invincible came out, we were a baby. And, you know, that one small store where you got somebody just evangelizing that comic and being like, you gotta read Invincible, you gotta read Attack on Titan, you gotta read this. That's where it starts.
I love buying physical media and toys. I collect statues, books, games, comics, of course, pretty much everything. And it feels really good, you know, to be surrounded by the things that I love, to, you know, wake up every day and be like, I have these things and they make me happy, you know? Everybody's different, but it's what brings me joy.
For me, my collection is nowhere near what it was when I was younger. I sold most of it to Open Third Eye. So it was kind of like a trial by fire, because we get so much cool stuff that I can't take it all home. Yeah. And we want the customer to be able to get it before us, you know, like that's why we're here. So for me, my collection is pretty small. I have a bookshelf of graphic novels. I got a lot of movies. I got a lot of movies, but that's because I couldn't, when I was selling my stuff, there wasn't a resale market for movies. But I mean, yeah, I mean, like for me, like it's cool to have the stuff and I love it. But I've been doing this and selling people all their favorite things so long that the thing that really excites me is learning what excites other people. So like, there's stuff that I'm not into, you know what I mean? That like, I might be like, oh, but this is a really cool, like, I don't know, weird Italian comic or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I'll be like, this is really cool. It might not be my wheelhouse, but I get excited seeing other people get excited for it. So when it comes to collecting, I love being around it, even if I don't own it. You know what I mean? I just love being surrounded by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best parts about working here is you meet all sorts of different people who are into all sorts of different things, and you learn things from them every day, and that expands your own repertoire of things that you like and you learn to love. And it's super cool just, you know, being able to recommend things to people that they get really into and, you know, can love and collect down the road and keep forever. Yeah.
Oh man, so I started going to a comic shop. I can tell you the exact one. It was Twilight Zone in Bowie, Maryland, Racetrack Road, end of a long hallway. Started going there. I was 12 years old, and I would go there every week. And I had a really good guy who worked in there, a comic guy, who he got to know me going in. And I remember I was looking for X-Men Alpha for Age of Apocalypse, and every week I was like, "Is it out yet? Is it out yet?" Week it came out, sold out day one. The guy was like, "I think I got one in the back." He hooked me up. And then I'd keep going back, and he would recommend stuff. He'd be like, have you heard about Hellboy? Have you heard about Dark Knight Returns? And that's blowing my mind as a 13-year-old. And I loved that store. It felt like my place. And when I was about 18 or 19, it had changed ownership, but I got a job working there. And I started working at that shop for probably 3-4 years. And once that store had, you know, once I got a little bit older, I was like, worked a few other jobs in between working there that did not like, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna try it. I'm gonna sell my collection. Everybody was like, it's a terrible idea, you know, like you can't open a business. And it was 2008. The economy was like, that's when the housing market crash happened. So everybody was like, no, and I was like, I'm gonna try it. And sold my collection, had just enough cash to basically, there was a guy here in Annapolis who had a store that was probably, I don't know, man, it was maybe about as long as this wall, and maybe to about right there, and he was getting ready to close, and he said, I'll sell you my fixtures and I'll sell you my inventory, And I had just enough money, and it wasn't a lot to do that. And then it was just the seat of my pants the first like few months, like basically just making it work. And we just did it, you know. It was my wife Trish and I, and we just pushed through. And that store turned into a bigger store that was a little bit bigger, and then it turned into a little bit bigger. And you know, before we know it, in 2017, we had moved Third Eye from up on West Street to over here, and now we got like 8 or 9 stores now, like something like that. Yeah, like
8.
So like
yeah,
it's crazy, and it's just I just love doing it. Like and I think that's true for everybody that works here. I mean, Emma started working here. How old were you?
I was 19.
19.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she had shopped with us at one of our locations prior to that.
Yep.
And then she started working here, and she's just working in the store while she was going to school. And she was like, "Hey, I need an internship. I'm doing this graphic design thing." I was like, "Well, I've never done internships, but we can try it out, you know." And like, she did such a good job with all the design work, and now she's our chief marketing officer, and she's running all the promotionals and structuring the campaigns. And it's just that kind of energy that everybody here has, that they bring to it, where we do it because we love it, and it's what we're good at. And at least for me, I don't know what else I'm good at, you know?
Hey, my name is Dave Murray. I'm one of the owners of Hello Comics. I mean, I think, like, I myself, I'm a big physical media guy, but I also use digital a fair bit. It's really convenient if you're like catching up on a long-running manga or something, if you have that digital option. But the physical media is just so nice to hold in your hands, like, you know, looking through the old ads, just smelling the paper. For a lot of people, it takes them back to, you know, when they were younger and first saw these issues. I think that's a big part of why people love to collect and why people love hunting down the comics from their childhood, or, you know, just things that remind them of like themselves in the past. I don't know, and there's just something pleasant, something very tactile about holding a single issue and just having it with you. And, you know, if you're on some kind of digital media, you can be distracted by so many other things, but when you're holding the book, it's just the book, which is nice. But I think, you know, digital reading and digital comics definitely have their place. I use them a fair bit. If I'm like reading in bed, or like my daughter's asleep in my lap and I just happen to have my phone, I'll read some manga on my phone. But I just think it's people like something that's tangible and, you know, once it's gone, something that's kind of impermanent, you know. Comic books are this notoriously, like, there's so many books coming out, there's so many books out there. It's this very nebulous, and for some, like a very frightening area of media. There's a lot of bad depictions of comic book store owners and like comic books being very gate-kept. So it's nice to be able to introduce people to this world that we know well, and to show them, you know, things. We believe comics are for everyone. So it's nice to be able to help people find a book for them, or something that they may have forgotten, or something that they have never known about. Yeah, it's just nice to be able to show people that world. And kids, we sell a ton of kids books. Selling comics to kids is like #1 best part of the job. Getting people hooked on that first series, or like just helping them find something new for themselves. It's so great, and kids are so receptive to like new stuff, and they're so excited. It's also like one of the best ways to get kids learning how to read. It's called dual coding. When the brain sees images and text together, combined in like a graphic novel form, that's like hands down the best way to learn. And so for kids, that's a great way to learn reading, or just about anything. I mean, there's tons of kids comics on like anatomy and science and just weird stuff like that, that you wouldn't expect in comic form. So it's just so rewarding to be able to show people all of the great things that comics has to offer. Oh yeah, I mean, it's just like, I feel like it's important to be like a hub of the community, especially, you know, I think bookstores, you know, went through a rough time, but it's a great community gathering place. I feel like having a physical location where people who like this kind of thing can meet and gather. It's important to have that in the community, I think, and it, you know, can bring people together. It's like physical spaces where people can meet or like spend part of their week is just so vital. Yeah, I mean, I think there'll always be a I mean, we're certainly not getting rid of digital media anytime soon. I like a lot of digital media and streaming stuff, and a lot of digital comic services. It's particularly if something's out of print, it's the easiest way to read a lot of older stuff. But yeah, I feel like they're in a good balance right now. Like, we have a lot of customers who just prefer the physical stuff, or customers who will read new things on digital but will seek out vintage physical media. I think they're in a good balance right now. I don't know.
When it comes to trading cards and board games, unlike never before, the money invested in both those things have skyrocketed to unbelievable amounts. I mean, the trading card industry is solely responsible for a lot of people that you may know paying for their bills, paying for their rent, paying for their mortgage. I mean, that's how much money is in trading cards. And the cool thing about it is not just the big business, not just Topps, Panini, Fanatics. It's not just those people. The money's not just staying with them. It's trickling down to a lot of creators, a lot of local store keeps, whether it's comic book stores, whether it's just straight up card shops. There's so much money to be made in trading cards and tabletop games. With tabletop games, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons especially, there's so many people who stream it, whether it's on Twitch, YouTube, Kick. There's so many people streaming Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop games that audience and that subculture has gained so much popularity over the years. It's always been popular, but it's skyrocketed since then. And that's due to people being able to buy these games, go to the store and learn it from the store keeps and other people who go to these local stores. Yes, there's YouTube tutorials and all these different things, but there's nothing like going to your local board game store or your local card shop and being able to shop those cards, those games there, to be able to experience midnight releases. Like, if you're a gamer, you're familiar with midnight releases. Don't happen much anymore, but an opportunity where you can't legally sell this game or these cards until that certain day. So they have midnight releases where as soon as the new day starts, technically, you're able to go buy these games. And a lot of people camp out, a lot of people with their friends line up, and it's such a interesting and dope experience that you can't get online. Like online, with online libraries, online stores, once the hour strikes, you're able to start downloading your game, which is fun, and it's cool because then you can just hopefully play your game as soon as possible, opposed to now where everything has to be downloaded. So when you go to the store, you get your video game, or you get some of these things, you have to go back and download it. But with trading cards and tabletop games, it's a lot different. You can go to these midnight releases and play, and you can rip as much as you want. You can also go and play these games with your friends in these shops, and it's just a moment, it's an experience that you can't get digitally yet, right? There's multiplayer games and stuff like that you can do, but when it comes to board games, when it comes to card games, like that kind of experience, those kind of moments that you're going to cherish forever, those kind of moments that explode and make the hobby so much bigger than life itself in some cases, you can't get that without being at some of these stores.
Believe it or not, I love the people the most about selling trading cards, whether it's the people on those cards or the people that you're selling actually to or buying from. A lot of these people have great stories. A lot of these people come from all types of walks of life that maybe you're not too familiar with. And so between players, between athletes or celebrities or just run-of-the-mill people that you talk to on a daily basis, the people would be my answer for that.
If I do say so myself, let's get it. Just run it up, man. Black jacket, gold paddock. These niggas don't want no static. New money, new traffic. Pain will attract like magnet. New wave, still crashing, but I'm making plays like man. Time to pipe up my status, but she thinks I'm so attractive. True. If you reach your limits, raise the roof. We ain't trying to argue, bring the truth. She told me what she wanted wasn't you. Then that's tragic. So nigga, self-reflect and start anew, and just flip it and move. Yeah, shift it and groove. Watch what that money do. Y'all niggas stay in tune. Yeah, bend the rules. It's time to change the view.
The process is you got to be organized. You got to make sure you have your inventory or your cards. You look up what everyone in the industry calls comps, and comps are basically looking at the prices in industry, whether it's sold on eBay or different platforms like Alt or Terapeak or 130 Point. All of these different kind of companies do very similar things. There's other you can pay to use different subscription services, but using eBay sold listings or 130 Point, Alt, all these places do a great job at showing you the prices of cards or commodities or trading cards that are being bought and sold on a daily basis. So just to go back to the question, you have to be organized. You have to make sure you know the prices that you're willing to accept and sell and buy for. And when you're selling trading cards, you have to make sure you take great pictures, make sure nothing, no stone is left unturned in terms of back is clearly displayed, front is clearly displayed. Everything as a buyer that you would want if you're buying an item is clear to you're doing it as a seller. So to basically have a good product, you have to make sure it's promoted very well. A lot of people use eBay as the main platform to buy and sell because it has the most exposure to the world, to the country, and internationally. So I would say you just got to be organized, know your prices, take clear pictures, and then the description of your items, very clear, very concise. Try your best to get good keywords. So if, for example, you're selling a Babe Ruth rookie card, you're going to want to make sure the words rookie, card, Babe Ruth, vintage, all of these types of things are on your listing so you don't have possible buyers not see your sales. So to grade trading cards, and there's a couple of different vendors that you could use, but it's to protect the cards first and foremost, but also to make sure that the cards are basically graded with a condition. So you could have an item that's graded very high, which means it's in great condition, typically gem mint condition, or you could grade a card and it's graded poor, 1, 2, 3, 4, very lowly on a 1 to 10 scale. There's different vendors that you could use, which include PSA, which is the industry gold standard, I would say, in terms of not necessarily their determinations of grades, but just buying and selling. Everyone uses PSA for the maximum amount of profit in terms of what you're buying and selling. For actual accountability in the grading process, not to say that PSA doesn't do this, they do a great job at it, but BGS, which is Beckett Grading Services, they do a phenomenal job. If you have a 9.5 on their scale, you're pretty sure it's a 9.5 regardless of who you're bringing it to. CGC also does another great job. SGC is another company, does a great job. All these 3-letter acronym grading companies are the gold standard, besides PSA, of course, in this space. And for people who slab things, and that's the acronym to slab it. People slab things for different reasons, and I would say the big reason people do it is it just consolidates value. And so you have something, you can take away what you think the value could be. If you grade the card, you could basically, because everything is running off of comp, so if you have a 9, everyone knows what a 9 grades and sells at. If you have, let's say, an ungraded card, that could be based on conditions, sell really high or sell really, really low. And so people like to consolidate the values of their items, and they do that by grading their cards 1 to 10 scale. There's another option, and I'll show you a little bit later with some of the stuff I have. You can just get the card authenticated. And so if you don't care about the card grade, you don't care about the condition, you just care about the actual item itself and you want it protected, that's an option too. Primarily what I do as a buyer and seller, what I do is first I gotta find product. And so how do I find product? I go to companies like MySlabs, which are great for raw and graded trading cards. I look at companies like eBay, ComC. ComC operates off of eBay. They have their own store as well. And I look at all of these places and I gather together all of the data of what's the best deal, the best price for the best card. And on those cards, I can see, okay, ComC has a better price than MySlabs does, or MySlabs has a better price than eBay. I find the item I'm looking for, I buy them. I then look and see, is there a signing that's happening for either the artist, the athlete, maybe a voice actor for an anime character. And if they're having a signing in the future, what I'll do is I'll just make sure that the cards are prepped. I'll make sure that they're clean and wiped down with a cloth to make sure there's no residue or no bumps on the card when they go to get signed. I'll send them out to the athletes, to the artists, to anyone really. And when all of that is done, it's really cool because the athletes or whoever I'm sending this to will sign the cards. They'll touch my items. It's kind of cool on a memento side of things. If I ever wanted to keep these items, they handled them personally. They'd sign them, and typically, in my experience, they will raise the value of the items pretty substantially in some cases, especially if you get the cards in really good condition and they grade high. And that's a nice part of collecting autographs onto cards. If you get already valuable cards that when they're graded in mint condition or gem mint 10s, and then you get a signature added, and then those cards are also 10s, so maybe they're 10 10s, maybe they're 9 10s. You then have at minimum the baseline value of an unsigned item, and then you have a signature on top of that, which many people can't replicate or duplicate easily or accessibly. Some of these signings happen maybe every 3 months. For other people, it happens every 3 years. So being able to buy and sell these autographs add rarity and add value, in my opinion, to the cards that I get signed and graded.
What was this again? 7?
My name is Sarah Leahy, and this is the End Games. This iteration of the store has been around for about almost 14 years. It'll be 14 this April, so in a month. It was bought by Shane, who was a longtime employee, Shane Borelli, and Sam Fogelgreen and Brian Roberts. I'm not sure how the three of them got together. That part of it I'm a little fuzzy on, but they did buy it out from the old owner and took it over. They've moved several times. In fact, when I joined up, we were literally across the parking lot, then moved over the next month to the current iteration. And yeah, it's been going strong for a long time. Wizards of the Coast created MTG Arena, and that has become very popular for certain formats, mainly for like the standard format. But we still see tons of Magic players because there's several formats that you can't do on that side. There's also a game called Flesh and Blood. It's started in 2019. It's getting more popular. And their whole philosophy is that they don't ever want to do an online version. There is a fan version of it that is online, but that company's whole attitude is that there's nothing like coming in face-to-face, engaging with people, the social side of TCGs. And board games are the same way, role-playing games, all that kind of stuff. It involves a level of creativity that I feel like you can simulate online, but isn't the same. And I think that's the missing link there. So no matter how many resources and other avenues come about online, I think it'll always come down to personal engagement. Honestly, as much as I am not what I would term a people person, coming in and engaging with the customers is a big part of that. They love coming here. They love engaging, they love playing together, they love setting up games, they love talking to us about the games. So many people talk to me about card games that I don't know anything about them. But I'll sitting there and enjoying their passion for it and their excitement, and just, the little kids with the Pokemon cards, they're so excited for the shiny Charizard or the Pikachu, and that just goes up, as you age. They're not quite as excited about the shiny, but a lot of them are. Don't let them fool you. There's something about watching people open packs and open games and engage and be so excited to be playing playing a game that they love to play, and choosing to come here and share that versus staying at home or choosing to play online. There's something about that really makes a store like this unique. You know, you can go anywhere and buy toys and games, but if they don't have a play space, if they don't have a community, it's just another store.
You know, part of the reason we opened the store was for people like me to have a place to come and to share experiences and to be nostalgic and to get excited about old stuff and new stuff alike. And my life has been enriched tremendously by that, not just by the physical objects, but the people surrounding the physical objects. And obviously, getting away from that digitally it's not going to be beneficial for anyone. I mean, we've all made the occasional digital purchase, no doubt, but I think in the long run, people, I mean, I don't just think, it's been proven I've owned a store for 4 years now. People crave physical connection about things they're passionate about. We have people that come into our store literally every single day. So video games have really enriched my life in many ways. And like I say, I go home, I play video games, I collect video games, I have a video game store, so they're a huge part of my life.
As a creator, there has to be a mindset of, yes, I want as many people to see this as possible on these digital platforms, but I also should have something for me in the event that there's a, internet outage and no one, in a certain area now they can't access that thing. You still have that part of your creation that you could send out to people whenever is necessary. So
we ain't tryna argue, bring the truth. She told me what she wanted wasn't you. Then that's tragic. So nigga, self-reflect and start a